Gasping, battling the pain of contractions, my eyes fixed on the envelope in Cassian's hand. The world stopped when he turned to me, on the verge of the most miraculous moment of my life, and whispered, "These are the divorce papers, Serafina. I can't do this anymore with you. There's someone else." The pain I felt then was beyond the physical contractions. I froze. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. I was humiliated. While the nurses continued their work, oblivious to what was happening, Cassian turned his back and left. I clenched my fists and began to scream. My cries came not just from the agony of labor, but from being torn apart from every direction. That night, I gave birth to a baby boy, Elijah, with no father's hand there to hold him. There were no celebration photos, just my bloodshot eyes and the soft cries of a newborn. When a nurse handed Elijah to me, I whispered into his tiny ear, "It's just us now, my angel, but I promise you, you'll never feel alone." If you were to face such a betrayal in a moment like that, what would you do? Could you find a spark of hope amidst such indescribable pain? Share your thoughts and the lessons you learned from this story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video. And most importantly, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a powerful, gripping story echoing on your screen every week. One that will shake you. That was the darkest moment of my life. So, how did I get here? Come on, let me tell you how it all began. I, Malik, had been married to Cassian for 6 years. It was a cold February morning in Atlanta, and I had just completed my 39th week of pregnancy. Cassian drove me to St. Seraphim Hospital, but we weren't talking much. His eyes were glued to his phone. My mind was focused on the pain, trying to breathe and stay strong for our little boy, that little man we'd been waiting for so long, who we were finally about to meet. But what I didn't know was that Cassian hadn't come to witness a birth. He'd come to deliver a betrayal. We arrived at the hospital room and the nurses quickly came in. As I settled in between deep breaths and increasing pressure, I saw Cassian walk in, holding an envelope. "What's this?" I asked faintly. He didn't even look at my eyes. "The papers," he said. "Divorce." At first, I thought the pain was getting to me, that I was hallucinating. "What?" I whispered. "I can't do this anymore. I met someone else. You'll be better off," he said. And then he just walked out, leaving me frozen, heartbroken, humiliated as the nurses rushed to work, oblivious to what had just happened. In that moment, I clenched my fists and screamed, not just from the physical pain of labor, but from being shattered in every conceivable way. I gave birth to a baby boy, Elijah, with no father's hand there to hold him. There were no celebration photos, just my bloodshot eyes and the soft cries of a newborn. When a nurse handed Elijah to me, I whispered into his tiny ear, "It's just us now, but I promise you, you'll never feel alone." The next few days were a blur of recovery and paperwork. Cassian didn't come back. He didn't sign the birth certificate. And when I returned home, my world had changed, quietly and completely. Life after the hospital wasn't easy. The bills piled up. I was a part-time substitute teacher, and now I had to rely on government support. Nights were sleepless. Elijah had colic and cried nonstop. Some days, I felt like I would collapse, but every time I looked at Elijah's brown hair, his eyes so much like mine but full of hope, I knew I had to keep my promise. I got up, started working remote tutoring jobs at night while he slept. During the day, even when exhaustion made my voice feel like a horse's whinny, I read books about child development and sang lullabies. My love poured into every moment of Elijah's turning. When Elijah turned 3, I enrolled in nursing school. I'd always known my love for science, and a local college's flexible evening program allowed me to study. My mom babysat. I aced every exam, even when Elijah got the flu, even when I missed a midterm given by professors who seemed to think giving up wasn't an option. I knew I had no choice, and I meant that failure was a luxury I couldn't afford, as long as Elijah relied on me for everything. By the time Elijah was 6, I had graduated and secured a job at a hospital in downtown New Haven. I worked the night shift and homeschooled Elijah during the day. He was sharp, curious, and full of questions. "Mom, why don't I have a dad?" he asked me one afternoon. I paused. "Your dad made a choice, but I also chose to make you my everything," I told him. Elijah nodded, then hugged me tight. In that moment, I knew he would grow up stronger than his father. Elijah never struggled in school. By 5th grade, he was reading at a 9th grade level. In class, he loved science, just like me, and he once told me he wanted to be a doctor so that mothers wouldn't have to cry alone in hospitals. My heart swelled with pride. He didn't know how much those words meant. I printed that quote and taped it inside my locker at work. It was a daily reminder of how far we'd come and how much further we would go. When Elijah was 12, I ran into Cassian at a gas station. He looked older, worn, and surprised. "I see him," he said. "He looks good." I just nodded. "Is that your car?" he asked, eyeing my Luna. "Yeah, it's paid off." "Are you okay?" he asked. "More than okay," I replied. Elijah walked out of the convenience store and saw me. "Who's that, Mom?" I looked at Cassian. "Just someone from the past." Cassian said nothing, watching his son walk away, a tall, confident stranger. He breezed through high school, and Elijah started winning science fairs across the country, even announcing he'd be taking dual enrollment classes at Georgia Tech. I rarely missed an event. I was the loudest cheerleader at every award ceremony, every speech. I was more than a mother. Elijah once told his mentor that I was his reason. Hearing that later from a teacher, I cried silent tears of joy in my car, a validation on the eve of Elijah's greatness. A video he made for his high school graduation, his senior capstone project, went viral. In it, he shared his story of a single mother, abandoned at birth, who inspired him to become a doctor. The video ended with him looking into the camera and saying, "Success isn't about who's in your corner." I hadn't anticipated any of this at first. Within 48 hours, the video racked up over 1 million views, sending messages of strength to Elijah and me from people across the country. News outlets reached out for interviews. One morning, I woke up to a voicemail from Sunrise Today. "We'd love to have you and your son on the show," the producer said. I sat in silence, my hand barely covering my mouth. For years I had breathed unnoticed, holding my invisible world together with faith and tears, and now the world would watch their segment next week. Dressed in soft blues, I sat next to Elijah in the New York studio. The anchor smiled and said, "Serafina, your son is grateful for everything. What kept you going?" I looked into the camera and said, knowing I was his first and only line of defense, I couldn't afford to quit. The audience applauded. Elijah reached for my hand, then looked at the camera and added, "She didn't just raise me, she rebuilt herself." The clip was shared across social media, igniting hashtags like #MomSerafina and #RaisedByAQueen. That night, I got a text from Cassian. It was simple. "I saw the interview. I'm sorry. I was foolish." I didn't reply. I looked at the message, not with anger, but with peace. There was nothing left to tell Cassian that he had missed everything. The first steps, the first words, the first awards, and now the first global recognition. Regret was a weight he had to carry, not me. Elijah got full ride offers from several Ivy League schools, but he chose Blackwood Academy, saying he wanted to be educated by black excellence, just like his mother had hoped. I smiled and nodded. "Just promise me you'll keep your feet on the ground, okay?" I joked. "If you hold your head high," he chuckled, the kind of laughter that comes from healing in college. Elijah interned at hospitals, volunteered for free in underserved communities, founded clinics, and even started an initiative to support young single mothers pursuing education. He named it Serafina's Light. When his mentor asked why, Elijah said, "Because my mom never got help. I want to change that for someone else." I visited one of his clinics once, wearing sunglasses, and cried silently in the back as I watched young mothers receive books and baby formula. My name was written on every bag. Elijah received an invitation to speak at a National Youth Leadership Summit in Washington, D.C. I traveled with him. He stood on stage in front of thousands of students, legislators, and CEOs telling his story again, but this time with more emotion, more fire. "My father abandoned me at birth," he said, his voice echoing through the room. "But the woman stayed. She turned that brokenness into brilliance." The audience rose in a standing ovation, cameras flashing. I wiped my eyes. The speech went viral again, this time earning me a spot on the cover of Epic Magazine's Voices of the Future issue. In the photo, Elijah was in a white lab coat, a stethoscope around his neck, and the caption read, "What a mother's love can do." When I saw the issue at a Unity market, I bought 10 copies, not out of vanity, but out of triumph. Elijah's senior year came, and with it, medical school acceptance letters. Harvard, Johns Hopkins, Stanford. He chose Emory University because it was close to home. "I want to be near you," he said. "I want to take my next step with you." I told him he could go anywhere, but there was no place without him. Graduation day was held in the university's grand auditorium. Elijah, now a grown man in a custom-tailored suit, stood as the validation provider for the room. The room was filled with family members, alumni, and professors, and then he began his speech. "I want to dedicate this to someone who never demanded anything, never deserved a moment of applause, but deserved every standing ovation imaginable. He had been left with a newborn baby and divorce papers on the same day, and instead of breaking, she built everything." The camera turned to me. I sat in the front row, trembling, tears streaming down my face. "My mother," he said, "the reason I am here, the reason for my faith, the reason for miracles." The video of the speech was uploaded again within hours and exploded, with mothers across America sharing it, tagging me and calling me a national treasure. Celebrities tweeted about me. Nonprofits offered me speaking engagements. I was once a woman who cried alone into a pillow. Now I sat in packed auditoriums, reminding women that their pain wasn't the end. It was just a beginning. One day, Elijah came home. "They want me to join a global women's health medical initiative," he said, "and I want you to come as the keynote speaker." I laughed and became an international mother. Softly I said, "You saved a life, mine, and now the world needs to hear how you did it." I took off my old hospital bracelet, faded from labor, bent down, and placed it in my memory box next to the Epoch magazine and my son's speech on stage in Veridian, Switzerland. Cameras, translators, and a packed house. I stood tall. "I was broken, discarded, and rejected," I said. "But I held on because sometimes all it takes is one person to believe in you, especially if that person is you." The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Years passed. Elijah became one of the most sought-after doctors in America, specializing in trauma surgery and opening community health clinics in underserved communities across the South. I managed Serafina's Light full-time, helping thousands of single mothers find homes, becoming a mother of strength and support. "You gave me hope when I had none," someone said. "Someone did that for me once too," I replied. Cassian tried to contact Elijah again. Elijah turned him away. "Forgiveness isn't the same thing as a relationship," he told his therapist. "I wish him well, but my life is already full." And he meant it. My mother had filled every void his father had left. There was no resentment, just a release. It was Elijah's 25th birthday, the anniversary of his birth. I stood in my backyard, surrounded by my friends, family, and the team from my foundation. Elijah raised a toast. "He started with nothing, but she gave me everything," he said. "My name is Dr. Elijah Thorne, but before any of that, I was hers." The crowd applauded. I smiled, looked up at the stars, and whispered, "We did it, baby." And for the first time in my life, every wound, every lonely night filled with tears, felt valuable.